Open House Hamilton. This is the best podcast that you never heard of. It's so awesome, you should totally listen. We interview locals and people you should know.
All right, everybody, welcome. I don't actually have a name for the podcast.
Oh, you don't?
No. This is like brand new for me.
Oh. Okay. What do you have in mind then?
I want it to be something generic enough that like could apply to, so I could interview anybody in Hamilton.
Okay.
I want it to be about Hamilton, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be too on the nose, like Hamilton talks, you know.
Oh, I see. So you kind of wanted to be about Hamilton, but have a name without kind of like Hamilton directly.
Yeah.
Um,
What about like Hammerhead or?
I like that, Hammerhead.
Well, I think there's a fish place called Hammerhead.
Yeah, there is.
I
What
hear it's
about
really good.
Steel City Podcast, something like that?
I think everybody does the steel thing.
That is true. I will give you that.
Speaking of which, have you ever thought it's kind of, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but obviously there's all these comparisons between Hamilton and Pittsburgh. And
I've heard
they're a
some.
steel town,
Yeah.
black and yellow football team.
Yeah, I can see this one. Yeah, now I see
I
it.
always thought of Hamilton as the Pittsburgh of Canada. No?
No, that could be. It could be.
I thought that was done on purpose.
No, I never thought of it like that.
I don't know if the tie cast used to have different colors, but I was like, seems pretty obvious what's happening here. I don't know who came first, but
No, that's true.
yeah. Okay. Hi there. I'm Dave of Dave and Kai, and today I'm here with,
Carson Frankham, licensed paralegal.
yes, thank you for coming on to our essentially first episode here of our as yet to be named podcast. So maybe we'll figure that out as we go.
Happy to be here.
Tell us about yourself and what you do. I mean, you just said your title, but
So I'm a licensed paralegal, licensed with the Law Society of Ontario in good standing. What I do is I provide legal services to the public, primarily in the areas of landlord and tenant law. I've been doing this for about a year and a half now. I have my own practice. The practice's name is Cheddar Paralegal Professional Corporation, named after my service animal Cheddar. It's been a blast so far. I've learned a lot. I do a lot of appearances at the Landlord and Tenant Board. I'm there essentially every week, arguing various cases, whether it be for landlords or tenants. It is primarily landlords. But other than that, I love it. I just have my own business and it's awesome.
yeah, awesome.
So the thing is, like, I do tend to focus on landlord and tenant law. Primarily that is, I grew up in foster care, so I've always taken an interest in the landlord and tenant law. So I've been kind of following it since I was 18.
Oh yeah.
So I've been at this area of law for myself for the past 10 years. Because when you're in foster care, you just kind of get thrown out to the curb at 18. And the
Sure.
only real way to ensure that I was being treated fairly was to go into that area of law.
So would you say that's, I guess, what drew you to this, to help other people with?
It has its own benefits, but now that I've been doing it for a while, I still like it. It's just, there obviously needs to be some changes to the law, to the way it is and whatnot, because as it kind of stands, the law for landlords and tenants, it's kind of broken for both sides. I will admit, in my own personal opinion, it is a bit more catering to the tenants, which is okay, because at the end of the day, as a province and as a society, we need to make sure people are housed. But the power imbalance does tend to go a bit more to the tenants. In terms of the landlord's power imbalance, there really isn't a whole lot of imbalance because the landlords still do hold a lot of power, and effectively they can still evict for a lot of reasons.
Uh-huh.
So I still enjoy it. It's a good thing. I like it. I get to go there. I help people. I tend to do a lot more negotiation and mediation, meaning I try to, instead of just worrying about what the rights are of the landlord and tenant, I try to work with both parties to facilitate a reasonable like move out for the landlord if necessary, or to facilitate repairs to the unit for the tenant. Because it's easier. And the one thing I always tell all my clients, whether landlord and tenant, you always want to try to mediate the dispute instead of going to the board. Because if you go to the board and you go in front of the adjudicator, the decision, the outcome is no longer in your hands. But if you sit there and you negotiate and you go back and forth, the outcome is going to be in your hands.
That's
and
good
then
advice.
You have a say in the outcome as opposed to having a decision imposed on you that you have to follow. And then if you don't want to follow it, the only recourse is essentially an appeal.
And how often does this happen where people actually go in front of the board versus just going through mediation?
So that kind of depends on the matter. So if it's for non-payment of rent, it's going to depend on the amount of rental arrears. Like if you have a small amount of rental arrears, more often than not, the tenants will try to negotiate a payment plan to save the tenancy. But if you have a very high amount of rental arrears, it's often just goes to in front of the board. Either the landlord's going to win or the tenant's going to win. Because like, I can't believe you wouldn't believe how many landlords out there allow tenants to go years without paying rent. Years. I have
Are they aware that this is happening, or
like I have a handful of clients that I've been tasked with going after 4 to 6 years of rental arrears.
How do you even justify that in front of the board without getting to a point where you're saying, well, you're aware of this and you just let it happen, then you clearly were okay with them not paying rent?
Because a lot of these situations that I have with the larger rental arrears is that the tenants are always paying something every month.
Right.
So a lot of the landlords are like, well, you know what? I'm getting something. Like maybe, like some of the matters I have, they do go over the $50,000 limit as well, the new limit. But like a lot of it is like they didn't pay, like let's just say it's $2,000. They paid $1,000 this month, $1,500 this month, $3,000 a month later, $300 a month after that. It gets really confusing for landlords. So that's why it gets to be so long. The best advice I have for landlords, if your tenant's not paying rent, give the N4 immediately. Because one of the issues that arises when you're doing multiple years of back rent is that the math has to be perfect. If the math is not perfect at the board, goodbye. You can get an order for the rental arrears, but you can't get the eviction.
So the simplest math miscalculation can just throw out your case.
Yeah.
Oh. Grab a calculator.
Or an accountant.
Yeah. So how is the current condition of the LTB and the wait times? Because my previous understanding, and I haven't been updated on this in a while, is that was sort of why people were... I'm not going to make any statements in that regards, actually. I'm just going to say that there was long waits, and that made people feel like it was helpless on both sides, depending on what the situation was. Is it still like that?
So the answer to that is it's kind of a yes and kind of a no. So my experience at the LTB right now is that they're getting really good at getting people to hearing dates and getting all that done. But they're still working on a slight backlog. Like today, I actually had a matter for a tenant. It was an N12 matter. It was launched a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And they're just getting it to it today. So what I'm finding is that there's a lot of matters like that are happening, but those matters are starting to become less and less and less. And what I'm seeing is that the tribunal is becoming faster in scheduling in general. Like to get for non-payment of rent, it's 2 to 3 months wait. For an L2 application, the board's website will tell you 5 to 7 months. But the reality is it's probably closer to the 5 to 6 month range.
So your wait time really depends on the type of case it is?
The type of case, the type of application. Like the N4 is the most serious one, 2 to 3 months. An L2 application, which encompasses the N5, 7, 8, and the N12, probably a couple more too. Depending on their type of notice that was issued, they will prioritize it, right? So the LTB, they have their own way of prioritizing hearings. I'm not really too privy to that because I go there a lot. You kind of have to be like a member, or you have to know someone in there to give you those details. But effectively, each notice each kind of application will have their own scheduling priority. And then it's kind of dependent as well. Like if you have, I have a client that wants to do an N5 and an N8 together. So that's going to be a unique application. It can be done on one L2 application, but because the issues are going to be the N5 and the N8, it's going to have to go to a specific hearing block. So the way the hearings work at the LTB is, unless it's the non-payment of rent, it always goes through a screening officer. They'll check, make sure all the paperwork's good to go. If you're missing anything, they'll let you know. And if it's good to go, then it goes to the hearing clerk. And then that hearing clerk will decide what's going on, how long this should be heard to take. And then they'll just give you a date, and then you'll know it's a hearing. And then it's just a waiting game.
So one of the reasons I actually reached out to you, the real reason I reached out to you, I thought you would be knowledgeable in this field, but in the news right now, they're talking about Bill 60. Can you tell us about it? And
Bill 60, that is an interesting bill. It's essentially a bill that amends various acts within Ontario, the LTB and the Residential Tenancies Act being one of them. There's the Construction Act that they amend as well. Something with the Water Act they amend. But they're just amending a bunch.
It covers several things. But I guess in regards to your field of things, how is that going to affect that?
I don't really think it's going to bring about any real positive change. It doesn't really do anything outrageous, if that makes sense. There's nothing major to it. The only thing that was major to it was the government was thinking of ending the indefinite leases, meaning that when you have a contract lease, it goes from 1 year to month. They were thinking of ending that and giving the landlords an opportunity to end the lease and kind of exit the market if they want.
So that it doesn't automatically
go
roll
from
over month to month. Yeah.
Because one of the complaints I get a lot from landlords is they want to exit the business because of the laws.
Yeah, I recently dealt with a client who wanted to sell his investment unit, but then we decided to hold off on it last year. And as he was waiting, his current tenant was moving out because they purchased a home. So he decided, okay, let's put tenants in there. And then when we were talking about listing it again, he's like, well, then do you come across this where you find a lot of landlords don't actually know their duties? And
Yes.
Because he was asking me things that I was like, I met him as a landlord, so I assumed he knew a lot of things. So as I was discussing things with him, it became very evident that perhaps that is not the case, and we are moving forward on misunderstood responsibilities.
I do find some landlords don't. It's kind of a 50-50 thing because I get a lot of landlords who know exactly the process. And then I get a lot of landlords who don't know what they're doing. They're like, I bought this as an investment. I just want my investment returns. I don't care. I just want the investment returns.
Yeah.
And then those situations lead to a lot of very unfortunate situations. I had a client back out in August that... Sorry, guys.
Settle down, boys. Boys and girls. For those of you that don't know, I know Carson because he has 2 corgis, but when I first met him, it's because he had 1 corgi, Cheddar, and we have a corgi as well. So what you're hearing is his corgis.
Cheddar and Patty in the background.
Yeah. Cheddar of Cheddar.
Paralegal. Yes. But no, I had this one client back in the summer. They didn't really understand their rights. They're trying to close it. they're selling it to someone who had rented it out, and then there's a lot of miscommunication because they hadn't closed on the property. They didn't know their rights. The property owners didn't know their rights, and the next thing you know, we're at the Landlord and Tenant Board because they've shut off the water, they shut off electricity, and they changed the locks. And that is a very terrible offense. Never shut off water, never shut off power, never change the locks. It's not worth it in any capacity.
Human rights, right?
No, it's just an offense under the Residential Tenancies Act to do that.
Isn't it an offense because it's impeding on their right to heat and water?
No, it's effectively it's interfering with the reasonable enjoyment of the residential unit.
Okay, sure.
Because effectively the heat, water, the heat and water are considered essential for everyday living. Like you can't cook, you can't clean,
Yeah, that's
you can't
kind of
shower.
like, I guess, what I was...
And then the locks, you just can't change the locks without giving notice.
Yeah.
And then they never... There's a whole thing about whether or not notice was given, and then ultimately the locks were changed, but it's a whole thing. There was like a whole misunderstanding, and now it's at the board. We're waiting for a decision. The tenants are trying to get a $35,000 fine. They're trying to sue the client for like another $15,000 in damages as well. It's a whole mess. So yes, there are a lot of landlords that don't understand their rights.
I mean, I think that's fair to say. So there was a spike in investors where people just thought there's going to be easy money. You know, I just got to put in the money, and it'll sort of all work itself out. So that's understandable. But circling back to what you said, you were saying that effectively what is going to change is the rollover period. So does that mean that once the contract is coming up, they have to put into writing another? Because I thought that technically, no, I guess you didn't have to necessarily do that as of right now. But yeah, would that mean that they have to put in writing another contract?
So if this is all hypothetical. So if this were to go through, effectively what would happen is the tenant would have to leave the property, or they would have to sign a new lease. And that's what would in theory happen. But what I have to say as well is the government has since kind of rolled back on that. It's kind of unclear. So with Bill 60, it's actually currently in its third reading today. So it passed
Today?
Yeah. So
Today is the 20th.
So it passed the second reading on the 17th, 3 days ago. It was in the House of Commons for debate today. There was a question put by a member. It'll probably be dealt with by tomorrow. I would not be surprised if this bill would be enacted by the end of the year, because it's going to be interesting with some of the changes. The only positive change, depending on what side you for, landlords or tenants, the only positive change in this bill that would be of any help is essentially the reduction of the 14-day rate period for non-payment of rent. So as it stands, you give an N4, you give the tenant 14 days, and then you can apply to the board. But with the new changes, you'll give the tenant the N4, you'll wait 7 days, and then you can apply to the board.
So those 14 days are an opportunity for them to fix things?
Yeah, so if you get an N4, basically you get 14 days to pay the rent in full and void the notice, or you go to the board. But with the new changes, it goes from 14 to 7 days.
So do you think these are the reasons why there has been such negative backlash in that regards to some of the proposed changes? Do you find that if I had to assume, I guess I don't have to assume, people are saying that tenants are worried that they're going to be essentially evicted once their contracts are up, or does that affect current contracts as well?
So that's actually an interesting question. So the way the law is kind of designed is that when a new law like that were to come into play, it would only affect contracts from the date is in effect. So if you have a contract prior to that date, you can generally argue, hey, I entered this contract prior to that date, so the old rules apply. Mm-hmm. So, but if you enter into contract after that date, then the new rules apply. It's going to be dependent on how the government words the bill, because what the government can also do is they can also word the bill in a way so that it's retroactive for a bit. So that if any lease that's in existence is, if you just want to terminate it, you can. So it's going to be dependent on how the government plays. But traditionally, and my understanding is that if you have a contract before the law changes, it's the before law that applies, and then after that date, it'll be the new law that applies. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, you seem like you obviously, when you mentioned that you try to mediate things, you try to be impartial, you want to help both sides of things. Mm-hmm. How do you think this is going to affect the industry? Is this going to be more favorable for tenants, landlords, or for both?
I don't really think it's going to be favorable for really anyone. Like if it's going to be if you want to say it's going to be favorable for one party, more likely the landlords than the tenants. Because there are some changes that are concerning. Like the one change is they're doing the change for the compensation for the N12. As it currently stands,
what is it, 2 months?
1 month.
1 month.
It's 1 month compensation. But if the law changes to what they want, if you give the tenant 4 months notice, there'll be no compensation.
Oh.
Which is actually kind of putting the tenant in a worse situation, because what tends to happen with these N12s, they're considered no fault evictions. So you're effectively being evicted through no fault of your own. You've done nothing wrong. It's not like you smell weird or you've done this or that.
that can be a cause.
It's not, you've done nothing wrong, but you're still being evicted.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if the tenants don't have that money, it's going to be much difficult for them to have first and last somewhere else. But then the issue then becomes is I get a lot of landlords as well, and I also get a lot of tenants that get the money for the N12, but then they don't use it for what it's supposed to be for. And then the landlords, they don't want to give the money to the tenants, because then they're like, I know they're not going to use this for first or last month's rent elsewhere. They're going to go take it out, have a good Friday night, whatever they want. A lot of landlords just assume tenants just have a good Friday night with this money. I get that a lot. But ultimately, if the tenants don't get this compensation, it's going to be much harder for them to find a new place.
Yeah.
Because rents are generally on the rise. Like, sure, they
had dipped for a while.
They haven't dipped, but generally speaking, you're going to be paying a higher rent at a new place than what you are now. So yeah, sure, they're going down, but they're not going down enough to make people say, okay, I'll just leave voluntarily.
All right, that was very helpful. I think the one thing I just want to really end things with is, what changes have you noticed over the last few years in the overall industry as far as rental investments, and both from the landlord and renter sides?
So from the landlord sides, I am seeing a lot of interest of people trying to get out of the rental business. Simply because it is difficult to get rid of the tenant, but that's just life in the society to which we live in. But from the renter side, I have seen a lot more kind of units available, but the units that are becoming available are the higher end units. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but if you have a large population that can't afford them, all these units that the investors like, they're not going to get the returns that they want. And things are not going to go the way that they want. So they need to do something. What needs to happen is the government of Ontario needs to effectively make a push to get people to really follow the residential tenancies laws. Because right now, people just don't want to follow them. And there's a lot of disputes in getting people out. One of the biggest issues I get a lot from landlords is they always ask about getting the tenant out illegally.
Illegally?
Yes.
They openly just ask that?
Yes, a lot of landlords will just openly ask that.
Okay.
And and that's
some people
just
are so
never
daring that I wish I had the confidence of a person like that sometimes, but then I really wouldn't be I wouldn't think like I do.
No, like
it's so
like it's
bold.
definitely an interesting topic from a legal perspective, but legally you just can't do anything illegally.
Yeah.
You just can't kick them out illegally. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth it for people looking to get into these investments in the next few years?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be worth it at all. If you're going to try to get into these units, either get into them for yourself or don't use them as an investment unit. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of people. The one thing I'll say is that there's a bit of a difference in housing attitudes over the past, I would say like 60 or 70 years. Because a long time ago, when you rented a place, it was you rented a place for a certain time to buy your own place. But now what's happening is no one is able to buy their own property anymore, right? So there's a lot more legal disputes arising.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just want to move on from the disputes, but because of the economic situation of the housing and all that, a lot of tenants will rather just go to the board to fight it. Because it's easier to fight something at the board than it is to obtain new housing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because when you argue about it logically, you can say, why would you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Why would you want to live in a place where the landlord doesn't want you? But when you put it in those terms, of course, it makes a lot of sense. How could you not do that if your alternative is to just have no place?
Yeah, like it's not, I know a lot of people say it's really easy to get up and find a new place and move, but it's not.
No, I always
It's a lot
say
of
this,
work.
like, if I was a single person right now, I don't know what I'd be doing. Like, if Kylie never left me, I might really panic because I'm just like, oh God.
Well, no, because that's the thing is I actually have a few landlord clients as well that they're in such a bad situation. They're either sleeping in the car. Like I have one client that's sleeping at their place of business because their rental property is being held hostage by the tenant. The tenant's not paying rent. They're not doing a whole bunch of things, and then he's just sleeping in his car and at this place of business.
Yeah. It's hard times, I will say that.
It is.
What a somber way to start off this sure to be amazing podcast. Thank you for coming in and honestly being very informative. We've actually reached out to Carson a couple times now when we've had these types of questions. He's super personable. How can people find you if they need your services?
If people want to just find me on Instagram, just search on Instagram Cheddar Frankham. You'll see a picture of me and Cheddar.
Okay, we'll either tag them or write it down somewhere. Is there a number or email you want them to reach?
Feel free to give me a call, 437-431-1217.
Okay, awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay, well, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This guy's always dressed well. We have these corgi parties, and he just shows up in a suit, best dressed.
Oh, yeah.
You think it's his birthday.
Got to dress to impress.
Take care.